What are you going to do with all that Steam wallet? This video has the answers. If you've been holding out all year on buying new games from 2025, now's the time to pull the trigger. Valve has kicked off their winter sale and we've collected the biggest and best games at all-time low prices, as well as the best bang for your buck to keep you busy all holiday and New Year's long. What do you say we start things off with a killer's row of critical acclaim? Believe it or not, other games were nominated at this year's Game Awards, but you wouldn't know it with Clair Obscur Expedition 33 collecting all the trophies. What made it so special? Well, if 2015's Undertale was a fan of the Earthbound and Mother series making their own game, 2025's Clair Obscur is a bunch of Final Fantasy nerds making an extra emotional and epic journey. Okay, RPG fans, it's up to you to make the next great indie by 2035. Okay, you know things are getting crazy when the second game in the whole video is Hollow Knight Silksong. This Metroidvania kinda spin-off kinda sequel was once an expansion to the core game before the developers took their sweet time as the entire fandom went completely insane. Was it worth the wait? Well, surprisingly, Team Cherry doesn't even act like a day is past, delivering a confident, no-nonsense action platformer to near universal praise, now at 20% off. I told you this was going to be an embarrassment of riches. Supergiant Games usually doesn't repeat themselves, but Hades 2 is a return to the snap-action isometric gameplay of the first game, but with a few refinements and additions to make it the most expressive title from the developer so far. If you want to follow basic descriptions, sure, it's a roguelike, but really it's about mastering all of your systems at your disposal. In this game, skill is what makes you OP. Megabunk is part of an odd story about an odd game. Originally nominated at the Game Awards as a debut, the developer had to politely withdraw, explaining they were simply going under a new moniker. Yeah, to make something this chaotic, you have to have some experience. Imagine if the Sega Saturn had lived into the brain rot meme age. A feel-good game that will give you plenty of reason to feel a little unsure. Remember those classic Telltale games that couldn't always deliver technically but had some of the best stories in all of gaming? Well, Dispatch nails that and improves on it. Originally started as a straightforward animated narrative, the team broadened out to create an interactive experience where you take control of a dispatch radio for superheroes. With unpredictable chaos, can you match the right person to the job? Here's hoping so, because with all this drama, one mistake could cost lives, super or otherwise. Ball X Pit is about as straightforward a game as possible. You play a version of Breakout, bouncing a ball back to progressively remove obstacles. It's a gameplay style almost as old as games themselves. But things take a turn once you fail out and get kicked to the core environment you'll be attending in between attempts, unlocking multipliers and powers that make one more turn into a surprisingly strategic and deep arcade-style game. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is simply one of the very best PC games of 2025, but the Royal Edition's price has been cut in two, and you get all that extra content including the expansions and DLC, to make this the definitive edition of the medieval first-person adventure game. Fantasy? No. Romance? Deliverance 2 is all about grounded realism, where soldiers guzzle enough mead to feel nothing in terrible climates. It's way more fun than it sounds, I promise. Schedule 1 still hasn't technically released, so it's not really a 2025 game, but tell that to the Steam charts. This CD simulator broke through in a big way thanks to its subject matter, but the gameplay maintained that momentum. Yeah, Breaking Bad might make it look all gritty, but Schedule 1 is pretty much like any job simulator. You'll be managing supply, finding distribution chains, and dealing with competition, and sometimes the law. Hey, a career criminal is still a career. Battlefield 6 is less than $50. Repeat, Battlefield 6 is less than $50. This multiplayer shooter won for Best Audio at the Game Awards, which might sound like short shrift, but boy oh boy, this is one headphone masterpiece. Hear that shot? You'll know what sort of gun it is. And then when a whole battle breaks out, you can close your eyes and estimate who was involved. You've heard a lot of praise for Battlefield 6, now hear it yourself. For less than $10, you can enjoy Sons of the Forest. Well, enjoy might be too strong of a word. You'll certainly be having fun and engaged alone or with friends. But you'll also be tossed into a jungle lush with cannibals and other hindrances, where you'll have to make your personal boundaries very known with extreme prejudice. This game only dropped last year and has seen a steady drip of thousands of very positive reviews. The Raincatcher is full, Explorer. It's time to collect. The Talos Principle 2 is from a bygone era of the first-person puzzle game. This was a time following the release of Portal 2 where the genre became rather in vogue. Well, the Talos Principle 2 proves the developers weren't chasing trends. They were in it for the love of the game. Get your gray matter ready for varied scenarios, pushing you to put it all together to escape to the next noodle scratcher. A great little game to keep your wits sharp. The Stalker series simply doesn't get enough credit in my humble opinion. Imagine Fallout but through an Eastern European lens. The narrative isn't so much important as the tone and setting. You're entering the Zone, a strange place where strange things happen, and people travel here for all sorts of different reasons, but very few of them are good. And the gun battles? Straight up some of the most realistic and intense in a single-player game that also has radiation mutants. Ahem. Just under $40 for a 5-year-old game might not seem like a great deal, but we promise there's a darn good reason CD Projekt Red can still ask for a contemporary price. This Ultimate Edition has all the improvements brought to its 2.0 and beyond updates, as well as the expansion Phantom Liberty. An edition so rich and massive it even has an entirely new story mode starring Idris Elba and Keanu Reeves. We're talking triple-digit playtimes. This is bang for your buck. If you're a bit of a weeb like myself, you should take a gander at Assassin's Creed Shadows. I can't really say this feels like an Assassin's Creed game, but it's one heck of a good open-world samurai and ninja game that will have you mastering the subtle art of tea ceremonies. It starts slow, but if you give it some time, you'll be grappling hooking castles like a 16th century Batman. Except this crew doesn't share his faith in the reform system. Red Dead Redemption 2 is a bit more of a curveball than you might suspect. As a prequel, there should be more action, right? Well, in that classic sense of dusty desperados, yeah, a bit. But if the first game was about cowboy cinema, 2 is far more interested in the great American novel, exploring the history, dynasty, and tragedy of this experimental democracy. By far the closest the AAA game has ever come to impersonating the works of William Faulkner. Star Wars Outlaws is the victim of an ever-shifting reputation. At first, the reception was mixed, but once people snagged it on sale, they discovered a compelling open-world Star Wars game. Now, don't go expecting Grand Theft Auto. Heck, it has a lot more in common with Red Dead. We're talking long stretches that really sell the massive environments. People are constantly discovering this quality adventure, and now it's your turn to decide if it's a hidden gem. There was a hot minute there where fans and critics thought Arc Raiders had a strong chance of taking Game of the Year from Clair Obscur. Sure, that's a bit ridiculous in hindsight, but this is still one of the definitive games of 2025. A third-person extraction shooter nothing like Helldivers, this one tasks players with exploring the remains of Earth after an extinction event. Sure, the robots might get you, but without laws, your fellow players have no reason not to snuff you out either. Yes, Escape from Tarkov has finally come to Steam, and that means the OG modern extraction shooter has arrived. If Ark is a little too streamlined for your taste and you enjoy complex systems like Stalker 2, Tarkov was made for you. Heck, this game is so hardcore that after all these years, someone only recently did the thing in Escape from Tarkov. And much like Arc Raiders, you're going to want to avoid your fellow players when you're a walking resource pinata. And yes, if you still can't get enough extraction shooters, Helldivers 2 is down by 20%. This game is always adding new content and as such doesn't see steep discounts like our other games. Instead, you'll be swimming through bug guts and oil in the game's super sloppy momentum. It's the match of satisfying shooting and sophisticated physics on top of a meta satire that makes Helldivers 2 a fan favorite. Halloween is come and gone, but what better time to play these creepy games than the dead of winter? Silent Hill F only launched earlier this fall and marks the first completely original entry in the Silent Hill franchise for over several years. This one turns the familiar American hometown into a 1960s Japanese school survival horror. And to live, you must fight, and some of the most emotionally unhinged bosses of modern games. Did they really need to go this hard? Find out for 40% off. Fatal Frame Mask of the Lunar Eclipse is back to 40% off, which is notable because this game doesn't trail much lower than that price. For those of you not in the know, Fatal Frame is a ghost game when the spirits of the undead can be combated with a camera, a take on that superstition that photographs capture part of the soul. An ever creepy but also rich experience that drills into sociology and psychology. If there's one thing that you can say about Dying Light fans, it's that their passion for the franchise is only matched by the continuous debate about which is the best entry. And of course, what the series should do next. Dying Light the Beast takes many of those notes into account, scaling back the societal elements of Dying Light 2 for a scenario more familiar to the first game. Of course, this has only caused further discussion, but this appears to have most fans' approval. Most. The Resident Evil 4 remake is such a confident reimagining of this classic for modern controls, your reflexes will be doing most of the work. With added stealth elements and more expressive movements, you can master the survival horror the same way you would an online Twitch shooter. Does that maybe negate the intended horror aspect? Yeah, but who cares? We're talking $16 for one of Capcom's best, or the Gold Edition for a few bucks more. Chronos: The New Dawn is a victim of the developer's success. Their previous work was a little game called the Silent Hill 2 Remake, which blew away fans and critics' expectations and even proved some of the doubters wrong, like yours truly. But their follow-up, Chronos: The New Dawn, has been overlooked, perhaps because of the switch from franchises, especially with Silent Hill F still coming. Well, you can get Bluebird Team's latest at 25% off, then you can see you played it before it was underrated. What do you say we talk some multiplayer? This year was packed with great titles, but among the most memorable is the Unexpected Peak. The developers had a bit of fun throwing together a climbing game and sharing it for people to play on Steam. It wasn't supposed to be their biggest hit ever, and yet here we are. Peak dominated the Steam charts because of its simple yet inventive gameplay. Get your friends and prepare to laugh your way to the afterlife. It'll make more sense. Just recently I learned there's a bit of a misconception about Elden Ring Night Rain. This isn't a DLC for the popular Elden Ring, it's a standalone multiplayer roguelike where players attempt to fight off all the bosses until closing the game in about an hour or so. From Software proves once again just how versatile their format is. Even without hundreds of hours of single player to explore, you'll experience the highs of the classic weighty From Software combat. NBA 2K26 is the latest and the most dominant basketball game in all of interactive entertainment. But heavy is the crown, with a fandom that scrutinizes every change from its annual release. But if you're the type to only dip in on occasion, you'll find a strong core game that translates the complex team strategy of pro play into a nimble and responsive control system that hangs tight to its stat-driven mechanics. And this year's game is already 25% off. Balatro is just a card game. Heck, it's just like poker, but even simpler. Except, well, there's all sorts of modifiers and tweaks that transcend traditional card games, creating a sort of droning roguelike that's impossible to put down. Take it from me, I don't play Balatro all that much anymore because I value things like eating and sleep. Yep, this one gets its hooks in hard. And if you don't believe me, have a go yourself. After all, it's just a card game. The Crew Motorfest feels like the accumulation for the franchise. After a couple of botched attempts, Motorfest arrives like a celebration for a series that never really hit its stride until now. Rather than combining endless types of racing, Motorfest scales back to the familiar common concept of car races. But it's the sunshine on a screen attitude that gives the whole game a glow-up. The crew has never felt or looked better. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero is in fact the follow-up to the Dragon Ball Budokai Tenkaichi series. This fighter puts the camera behind the back, sort of like Virtual On, except you can destroy the whole planet by accident. If you're a fan of Akira Toriyama's work, especially his best brawls, Sparking Zero has all the characters and their interactions with unique era-specific movesets now extended all the way to Dragon Ball Super and beyond. By all means, Fallout 76 could have floundered years ago, but Bethesda put their shovels down to refine the launch experience, slowly but surely winning over Fallout fans. You can almost call this the Elder Scrolls Online to the ever-in-development Elder Scrolls 6. So if you're waiting for Fallout 5, stop it! Especially because you're getting Fallout 76 and all those updates for only $4. A deal so nice you could buy some extra copies for friends. What? It's the holidays! Stalker, by way of creepypasta, it's Misery. This game looks like it escaped out of the rusty remains of a PlayStation 1 development kit, which means it's totally catnip for retro gamers and horror fans alike. The negative reviews say it's strange and confusing, and the very positive reviews say the same thing. It's a unique flavor that hits for some people but not everyone, making it well worth a look at 25% off. One of the great games of last year has to be Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2. Oh sure, the single player delivered the signature bombastic campaign, but perhaps most surprisingly is how well maintained the multiplayer is, giving friends hordes of enemies to face off against before finally succumbing in the glory of battle. 60% off means you can run through the well-reviewed story before joining the ranks of your fellow online players. In case you missed it, Larian Studios is heading back to Divinity. Well, if you've never had the pleasure of playing these classics, which helped them earn the job on Baldur's Gate 3, you've got at least 200 or so hours of game in this $10 and change package. Personally speaking, I'm glad to put my PS4 copies away for good. But yes, this game does have surprisingly good controller support, much like Baldur's Gate 3. Oh hey, speak of the devil! Yeah, Baldur's Gate 3 isn't just a game of a year, it's a game lasting throughout a generation where players are rolling again to rinse every bit of story from this universally celebrated title. The developers have already said their next project will be even bigger, but you know you're in for a treat when the fans say that's not possible. Baldur's Gate 3 will own your weekends and nights. For just under $40, you can dip into Monster Hunter Wilds, a game that admittedly did not put its best foot forward but has since seen improvements through updates. The core game itself functioned well, it was more about the pattern of new content releases as well as some PC issues that held it back. But now at 45% off, you can head off to the fields fighting creatures 20 times your size in Capcom's weighty movement. With more content to come, this might be the right time to jump in. Anyway, that's gonna do it for this list, but how about a chat back about what you're gonna buy and what you recommend in the comments below. Keep clicking around here at GameRant.com, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks everybody!